We're a couple of days over the official first month of the NBA season, and with the 18 games played by the Chicago Bulls thus far, we'll take a look at who this team has showed us that they are at this point of the season, and what are some things that could turn around for this team, or what are some things that are just going to be inherently problems and struggles of this team. Plus, we're going to dive a little bit into the mailbag. All that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go and get into this content today, y'all. I want to start off, and the main topic that we're just going to focus at today is what the first month of the season has told us about this team. And, you know, it's a mixed bag as always. There's some really good things with this team, but there's some concerning things even out of some of those good things. Let's focus on the good, right? The Bulls right now are the new play style that the Bulls have been trying to or talked about instilling is real. It's sloppy, but it's real. The Bulls are averaging the highest pace in the NBA. They're averaging the 8th most field goals per game at 90, and they're also the 3rd most three-pointers at 42.6 three-pointers per game. They're shooting that at the 11th best field goal shooting percentage at 46.8% on the season. Again, 11th best in the league. And they're the 4th best three-point shooting team in the NBA as well as far as per percentage at 38.5%. These are legitimate strengths of this Chicago Bulls team that, you know, they wanted to work on coming into this. And while the Bulls have talked about being a team that takes more threes for the last 3 years, this is the first year that is tangible, that it's proof, that the statistics support them becoming a way better three-point shooting team per the amount and the percentage that they're hitting it at. And the Bulls have done really good at it. That is basically the reason why the Bulls have been able to be in these games, especially when they shoot lights out. If the Bulls shoot well, they end up winning these games, right? I know you could say that about any team, but it's a higher degree of variance for the Chicago Bulls, mainly because of that's what their bread and butter is. They're living and dying by the three-point shot. And you could say there are a lot of teams that are doing that, but even some of the teams that are quote-unquote living and dying by the three have more of a half-court offense than the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls, when forced into half-court sets, are actually one of the most inefficient teams in the NBA. Between the turnovers, the field goal shooting percentage, the number of drives that die, the Bulls are just not this team that are moving it around, like are successful in the half court. And thus, teams are finding some really good success against the Bulls when all you have to do is force them to be a half court team, despite their three-point shooting, despite the number of field goals they get, despite their efficiency at times. And that's why the Bulls, despite being towards the top of so many offensive categories, sit at a 7-11 record. Now, in the Eastern Conference, that's not overall bad. Like, a lot of things are tight in the Eastern Conference right now. Hell, the Bulls are the 10th seed, and technically they're 2 games behind being the 4th seed, right? The Bulls right now have that 30% chance to make the playoffs overall. So, like, yeah, there's a lot of teams, and right now the fact that the Bulls are just striving and really living off the fact of that three-point shot. But where it gets difficult for the Bulls is that the Bulls have a negative 6.5 point differential. If you look at in the Eastern Conference, that actually puts them as the 3rd worst differential in the Eastern Conference. That's why I say things like, yeah, what the Bulls are doing is cool when you look at the raw numbers, but when you really compare that out, like, the Bulls have a differential of a 30-win team. And so how much of that, like, at some point, the averages have to average, meaning that either the Bulls are going to have to become a better get a better differential if they want to stay towards that playoff area, or they're going to end up falling and being one of the worst teams in the Eastern Conference, like their differential tells you. When you look at last season, for example, the 2023-24 season, to make the Bulls, even with 39 wins, had a negative 1.4 differential. That's not nearly as large. And there are only 2 teams that made the play, and them and the Hawks had a negative point differential. When you look at the negative 6-point differential, for example, the Toronto Raptors had that last year, the same point differential, and they were a 25-win team. You flip that and look at the West. The San Antonio Spurs had that same point differential, and they were a 22-win team in the Western Conference. So, you know, I get it, where a lot of people are like, well, look at the Bulls' record. We're right there, right in the Eastern Conference. Yeah, but when you look at the differential, when you look at how they're not really outscoring opponents at all, the Bulls are still giving up more points by far than what they're scoring. That differential usually ends up averaging out. and you end up not being as high up as what you are just because of that differential. And so if you're looking at right now in the Eastern Conference, for example, and we change that number, if we were to rank the teams by differential, and what that usually means for where they're going to sit in the draft, right now the Chicago Bulls by differential are the third, like I said, the third worst team in the NBA. So that means that teams like the Cavs, the Celtics, the Knicks, the Orlando Magic, the Miami Heat, the Milwaukee Bucks, the Detroit Pistons, Brooklyn Nets, Indiana Pacers, Charlotte Hornets, Atlanta Hawks, Toronto Raptors, all would be ahead of the Chicago Bulls if things end up averaging out to what their differential is telling us right now. And that's why when people say things like, I'm not as enamored as what this team looks like offensively as some Bulls fans are by just the raw stats, because, again, yeah, I'm a numbers guy, and I like to see what the numbers are objectively telling us, and they're telling us that, yeah, the Bulls, again, as we see with our eyes, they're a fun team. This isn't a team that's going to win a lot of basketball games. And, again, to get back into where the Bulls are efficient at, right, they use their pace really well. We're the 13th best rebounding team in the league, 5th best on the defensive boards, which is getting the Bulls more offensive opportunities. But we have the 7th most turnovers in the league at 16 turnovers per game. And despite all of that, despite how efficient we are, how high we are in field goal shooting percentage, pace, all of that, we're the 7th highest scoring team in the league. But let's flip that and look at it defensively. The Chicago Bulls have given up the most points in the NBA this season by far. By far. 2,230 points given up. We are almost 300 more than the next team below us, which is the Atlanta Hawks. When you look at points in the paint, which is one of the things that is really hurting this Bulls team dramatically, 59.6 points in the paint given up per game, which is the most in the NBA, and that's 5 more than the next team below us as well. We're giving up 123.9 points per game, which is the most in the NBA, and we have 3 games or more of giving up 140 points, and we've given up the 4 highest scoring quarters in the league so far. The highest quarters in the league, we've given up more 40-point quarters than any team in the NBA. So it's again, that duality. The Bulls look much better. Much, 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 much better offensively than what they have the last couple of years. Even though some of that offense, to me, is based on luck, and that's what all shooting teams, right? You want a hot night, you need a cold shooting night, whatever it is, right? And when you look at that, unfortunately, that is where this team is. That is where this team sits. That's where this team is at right now. We are a team that is not playing well. And despite all of that, when you look at the totality of the game of basketball, the Bulls' defense is not just the Achilles heel. The Bulls' defense is like chopping off one of your legs and telling you to run a marathon. That's what it is right now for the Bulls. I guess that analogy is probably apt, as we're the fastest paced team in the league. So yeah, we're running fast with one leg, but unfortunately we end up stumbling every single time because we just don't have the base. We don't have a half court set base. We don't have a defense, any type of defense. We're the worst defense in the league. So yeah, all the numbers and the efficiency are great, but how far is that really going to get you? And that's what we have to ask ourselves. Now, there are other things that have also played into that. The Bulls have had injuries. Lonzo's been out. Again, I've said it before. I don't think Lonzo dramatically changes the ceiling of this team this season just because of he's already going to not play back-to-backs. And believe me, after an injury like this, they're going to be even more. If they were thinking about lessening, which I do think before he went down with injury, I think he played like 18, 20 minutes in one of those games. If they were even considering lessening Lonzo Ball's minutes restriction, after this injury, that's going away, right? Of course, injuries too. We've missed Zach LaVine for a game. We've missed Coby. He's missed time. Jalen Smith has missed time. Patrick Williams is going to be out for another week more than likely, right? We're not going to see him till after Thanksgiving. Julian Phillips is down now, right? We don't know how long he's going to be out. So with all that said, yes, injuries have definitely played a part in the Chicago Bulls season so far, and inconsistencies as well, right? When you look at Coby White and Josh Giddey, they've both been wildly inconsistent so far this season, and that's your starting backcourt, right? Coby White has been more consistent than inconsistent. I think that's safe to say, but we're still seeing those streaks of Coby White going through 2-3 games of just not playing well. You look at the defense in that last game against the Memphis Grizzlies. Like I said, if we're gonna crucify Josh Giddey for his defense, then we need to hold that to every player. Coby White's defense has been very inconsistent despite whatever his scoring totals are telling you, right? And so we need better from Coby from that. Josh Giddey. I think that the kid's confidence was shaken, but we still need more consistency from Josh Giddey. Now, someone's going to say, and I know somebody's going to respond, well, Haize, but Billy Donovan in his minutes. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing there. But I would say this as well, that some of the times where Josh Giddey is not getting minutes is because his defense is absolutely trash. This isn't to say that Josh Giddey needs to play more because of bad defense. This is to say that more players should be playing less in certain situations if their defense is bad. So don't let me critiquing Coby White over his lack of defense at times to make you say, well, yeah, because Coby plays more, that means even with Josh Giddey's bad defense, he should play more too. No, sit both their asses if they're not giving the effort you need defensively, and somebody else is bringing it. Right? Now, I understand with Coby scoring why you're going to still play him at times where his defense is bad, but listen, I believe when somebody's defense is bad in crucial moments, in a clutch game, in a close game, you got to consider sitting them if the defensive stops are what you need. And so inconsistencies from those players, the inconsistencies that are always there from Billy Donovan as a head coach in this year, in this league, always going to be there as well, right? So I don't want to, and I'm not going to overlook that aspect of it. But as it stands right now, the Bulls are just this team that I think a lot of people are getting caught up in the fun factor. And I understand that because we haven't seen a Bulls offense that looks this modern, honestly, in probably the last 8 to 10 years, to be honest with you, right? Even under Jim Boylan, the offense wasn't really modernized. Under Fred Hoiberg, we had kind of more modern things at that time, but the offense just was a really stagnant offense at that point as well. So, like, we just haven't had the offense that looks like this offense is look, and I think that it's getting caught up. But when you factor in differential, when you factor in the sloppiness, when you factor in the points in the paint allowed, when you factor in the points overall allowed, this is not right now looking like a team that is going to actually make a push. That's why when I get the voicemails of, hey, the Chicago Bulls, can they be a top 6 seed? Hey, don't give up. This is just a slow start. This isn't a slow start. I hate to say that. When you are shooting the ball, when you're shooting the ball in the top 10 in both threes and right outside the top 10 in field goal shooting percentage, that's not a slow start. Now, defensively, we're off to a terrible start. But if you're looking at this team and you think there are going to be dramatic improvements defensively, I need to know what you're smoking. I need to know what you're smoking. And this is why I say that the Bulls aren't off to a slow start, right? In the comment section with ATS, this is not a slow start. Your 8th most field goals in the league. Third most three-pointers in the league. Highest pace in the league. 11th best field goal percentage in the league. 4th best three-point shooting. Unless the Bulls turn into, for one of the better offenses in the league per statistics, to the best offense in the league, this isn't a slow start. This just isn't a slow start. And a matter of fact, when you look at the new pieces that we have on this team and how people are acclimating, this is honestly probably a better start than what we deserve. It just is. And that's my opinion. I'm not saying everybody has to share that opinion or that view, but that is my opinion on this team. This ain't a slow start. We're the 7th highest scoring team in the NBA to start off this season. Despite everything, all the issues, all the hurdles, all the new pieces, working into a new system, this isn't a slow start. These are things that are held back by the roster construction of this team, and there's some things that are fundamentally going to be difficult for this team over the course of the season, and that's defense. This team, and I know people are going to say, well, Haize, the Pacers were bad defensively and good on offense. Yeah, again, they were the best offense in the league per efficiency last season. The best. And they had a player in Tyrese Halliburton playing at a star level. Now look at what he's given this season and look where their Pacers are, right? So, hey, listen, I love what a lot of what's happened this season. I love that we're showing an actual ability to evolve as an offense, but we're really missing the defense that we had. And let's keep in mind, Zach LaVine having one of his best seasons on both sides of the ball so far. Nikola Vucevic having his most efficient season in the Chicago Bulls uniform. Coby White, even with the inconsistency, is right there with where he was last season. And in some areas, he's even better considering he's now off ball and he's still giving close to the same number of assists, close to the same number of rebounds, shooting the three at a better percentage, shooting the field goal percentage at a better percentage. He's turned into one of the better catch and shoot players in the league, which is something that we had a question on. So this isn't a slow start for the Bulls. To me, when we're looking at what the first month of the season has told us for this team, to me, it's telling us that this team is going to be fun, but it's going to be bad. And that's what we knew coming into the season. There's nothing really that changed. Now, hats off to the team for the way that they're able to execute certain areas of this game, but we're still not that team. We're not those guys. We're not going to be that team unless things drastically change defensively. That's going to go on some magical run to really be worth this team, in my opinion, missing out on their draft pick, which gets us to the next topic. Still, and I know I've been saying this since before the season started, but to me, this is still indicative and shows that this Bulls team needs to be focused on development even more to end the season. Dalen Terry is having a really solid season. And yes, in his third year in the league, yes, he should have been further advanced than this, but he hasn't played a lot. But Dalen Terry is showing himself to be an energy player. He's even showing himself to have a better, as far as ability of an awareness of knocking down open shots. He's more aggressive offensively than what he's ever been before, right? He's doing that. He's taking 4 shots per game. He's making 6 points per game. But then when you look at the way that he's impacting game defensively, the assists that he's getting out to, how many fast breaks he turns into, like the development aspect has worked for him. Buzelis has definitely shown flashes. He's been inconsistent, but his minutes have also been inconsistent. And I think the last game is a perfect example for Buzelis on just the inconsistencies that are going to be there as part of his game, but still why he needs to be getting minutes to work out and to become a more consistent player this rookie year. Buzelis played a great first half of basketball. He went scoreless in the second half of the game. Of course, that is what it is. But when you look at the first half that he had, that to me shows that a player that, hey, I'm ready for minutes at this level. I'm ready for it. Now, you just got to have a coaching staff that's going to give him those minutes, right? And again, like I said before, in no way am I saying that Buzelis deserves to be this guy that just, you get 16 minutes, you get 18 minutes every single night. No, play it off how he's going, right? If he starts getting cooked defensively and you need a defensive stop just like anybody else, sit his ass down. You have veterans in Torrey Craig, right? You have guys that you can bring in his place if he's not playing well, but give him and let him earn the opportunity to continue to play well, right? And to the credit, he did that. Billy Donovan primarily did that in the last game. He played still double-digit minutes in the second half of the game, even though some of that was in garbage time. But that was despite him being scoreless in the second half. He scored 14 points in the first half of the game. So development still needs to be a focus for this team. Julian Phillips, it's been a mixed bag for Julian Phillips. Not quite what I hoped for him coming into the season. But again, it's coming along, right? So I think overall, when you look at the Bulls' chances right now to make the playoffs, there's no reason why not to continue to develop and give these guys time. And that's at the coaching staff. That's on Billy Donovan. And hopefully they wake up and let these guys continue to earn and show. Because I tell you what, the future of the Chicago Bulls is only going to get brighter if these guys develop, if these guys grow, if these guys ascend. And so if the Bulls aren't prepared to do that, and they are committed to going and maybe diving into this race for the play-in, it's just going to end badly for the Bulls, in my opinion. So we'll see where that goes also in time. But let's get into this voicemail today that we have, man. This one is from Mike.
Hey, Haize, it's Mike. Calling again to ask you about a topic you talked about a lot in the offseason, which is whether or not Josh Giddey and Coby White fit together, both playing together. All my voicemails, I've been raising concern about the team defense, and I admit that I've been focusing more on Josh Giddey because he's new, but you raised a good point in the last episode that, when Giddey's not on the floor, a lot of those teams, like the Cavs, were hunting Coby White. So it just raises the question about roster construction moving forward. If you move on from Zach and Vooch, but you still are starting Giddey and Coby as your 1 and 2, is that a good idea? And I was wondering if you could maybe talk about that, or maybe even do another episode on it to look at the analytics, of the lineups, and also the point differential. And just looking at offensively and defensively, whether those two guys being on the floor makes sense at all. That would be great. I still stand by what I said about Giddey, that if he doesn't show improvements defensively as a team defensive player, then the Bulls should look to sign and trade him. Or I guess the same could be said of Coby White. But hopefully the draft, if we do get to keep the top 10 pick, you pick whoever is the best person available, and then that might dictate what other moves you do. All right, well, thanks a lot. Thanks for everything you do.
Coby White and Josh Giddey on the court. So it's been really a mixed bag, right? And I think when you look at it, it's weird. It's a weird dichotomy between the two, because Josh Giddey has been, some of his better lineups is when he's on the, I won't say lineups. We have more positive lineups for Josh Giddey when he's on the court with Coby, but there's not a lot of possessions. Of course, the most possessions that Josh Giddey plays is with Coby White. That's in the starting lineup. That's the 316 possessions together. and that's with him in the starting line, the same starting lineup, but with Ayo at the 3 and Zach LaVine at the 4. That has played 109 possessions together. That's been the starting lineup since P. Will's basically been down, and both of those are negative, right? So more times than not, it's a net negative for the team. But then when you look at Coby White, right? Coby White's some of his best lineups are without Josh Giddey in them, and so there's an interesting plus minus when it comes down to it. Not the plus. There's an interesting thing there between those guys. Like, it's been solid. Like, Coby White has turned into one of the better catch and shoot players in the NBA, shooting over 40% in catch and shoot opportunities. Also, when you look at the interesting stat came out the other day as far as like players who are generating open threes with their passes, and of course, Josh Giddey was in the top 10. Ayo, Zach LaVine, Coby White, all in the top 10. It was really interesting to see that, right? So the Bulls are passing and they're creating more shots, but the backcourt of Josh Giddey and Coby White has had its positives, has had its negatives. It's still showing that Coby White is better in the backcourt with Ayo Dosunmu. That's just what it is. In the 54 possessions that Coby White and Ayo Dosunmu have been out there with the starting lineup, right? With Zach LaVine, P. Will, Nikola Vucevic. The Bulls are plus 3-point differential. They score 118 points per 100 possession. And when you look at it, the opponents are only scoring 114 points per 100 possessions. So basically, the Bulls have a positive point differential with that lineup out there on the court. You flip it with that same lineup, that same exact lineup with Josh Giddey and Coby White out there, we're negative 4 points per negative 4.4-point differential, and we're only 109 points per 100 possessions, and we're giving up 113 points per 100 possessions. So it's just the thing that Josh Giddey and Coby White have made it work on the offensive side of the ball. I think what we're seeing overall is that the Bulls, they're making things work offensively for themselves, or efficiently, I guess. Efficiently. But it's just that Coby and Ayo, they still show flash. It's just the defense. I don't even think it's necessarily just those two players. I think it does also come down to who's out there with them, right? You need more defenders, and I still hold out that if you had this mobile, more shot blocking, rim protecting, athletic big that can still do some offensive things, you would see a lot different when it comes to those splits. So overall, it's not been positive, but it hasn't really been wholly negative, either more negative than positive. And maybe that's one of the things that they can continue to work out. But if you're looking at Josh Giddey and is fit with Coby White alone, it's not really good. But Josh Giddey's best lineups, and I said this the other day as well, when you look at the best lineups for Josh Giddey, it's still coming down to he's better out there with bench unit players. And that's not to say that it's just when he's out there with Ayo, Dalen, Julian Phillips, those are some of his best overall lineups. They just are. And so you got to kind of work that. Maybe Josh Giddey needs to be the stagger guy. Maybe that's the case, right? So we'll see. It's still a work in progress, and we'll see where it develops for this team. But thank you for the voicemail. It's actually a really great question. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bull Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. BullCentralPod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.